let's start with that first. Congressman Mikey Romero, Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano now mouthing off that frankly speaking, the Senate was to blame. The reason why we're playing catch up as a country when it comes to the SEA Games.
That's too far from the truth because everybody knows by now because it created a lot of controversy then during the speakership of GMA. The budget was delayed because even after both houses ratified the BICAM report, meaning yun ang final version, and yet they still inserted around 75 billion pesos. And that we could not agree to. So what we did was to again scrutinize and find out which of those 75 billion pesos worth of projects yung napasok do sa after or post-BICAM ratification. And unconstitutional because there's a provision in the Constitution na after the third and final reading, wala nang papasok na amendments.
Okay. Couldn't it have been possible that the SEA Games budget was released earlier on just for the country to prepare?
No, that could not be the case because contained yun sa 2019 budget, hindi pwede may mauna because it's one whole package. That's the General Appropriations Act for 2019 of 2019. So sama-sama yon.
Okay.
But hindi naman pwedeng gawing dahilan yon. Look, Karen, halos tapos na kami sa budget because we have already submitted our individual amendments. But it's far from over simply because we have yet to meet in BICAM. Yun ang magiging problema because dito na naman yung bakbakan. Because what we need to talk or discuss during the BICAM supposed to be yung disagreeing provisions, meaning pinasa ng Senado, pinasa ng House, yun lang ang pag-uusapan. But alam mo, sa tunay na buhay, ang nangyayari, ang daming mga ibang insertions, not even tackled during the House debates and the Senate debates, and yet ipinapasok.
Okay. President Duterte wants an investigation of the SEA Games, and you have former Olympic Committee Chair Christy Ramos, who just said on Early Edition, she said the Philippine Olympic Committee offered to help, they were turned down, and FISGOC was formed without the Philippine Olympic Committee knowing. It's a conflict of interest to have a politician heading FISGOC. Yeah. And now, how do you have an investigation with Cayetano having a sibling in the Senate, Tolentino having a sibling in the Senate?
Well, once a resolution is filed calling for an investigation, then we will investigate. Or if anybody, if a senator would deliver a privileged speech, then we have to investigate because necessarily it will be referred to a committee. In this case, either Blue Ribbon Committee under Dick Gordon, who is a no-nonsense chairperson, and or the Committee on Sports, Games, sports. I think chaired by Senator Bongo.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask you offhand, is it illegal for the Philippine Sports Commission to transfer 1 billion pesos to FISGOF, which is a private foundation?
That is questionable because remember, may mga nakasuhan na, may mga nakonvict na dyan, using a private foundation as a deposit or repository of public funds. Kasi yan na nga yung Napoles case, di ba? Yung mga private foundations ginamit na parang ginawang parking lot ng mga public funds coming from the general appropriations or the expenditure program ng government. So we have yet to see that because there are justifications put forward by Speaker Alan when he appeared as a resource person during the budget deliberation of the PSC and I think BCDA as well. Sinabi niya every step of the way they were in consultation with COA.
Okay. Is there anything wrong with the BCDA securing a loan for the Malaysian firm MTD to build New Clark City and for it to earn 2.5 billion a year? A total of, it was a 9 billion peso loan, and in the end there's an ROI of 2 billion more with MTD earning essentially from that loan.
Yeah, as of now I don't see anything wrong, except of course kung merong some shenanigans that transpired during the acquisition of that loan, but right now I don't see anything wrong because dumaan naman yan sa other government agencies like NEDA, because it's SOP eh. Pagka when you contract loans, hindi lang naman isang agency yung involved.
So in effect, Senator, you're saying if the budget was delayed for 2019, it's the fault of the lower house because they keep inserting pork.
Yeah, they should not blame us because sila yung reason for the delay. And, well, of course, the Senate was also partly not to blame, but you know, we do not regret what we did because scrutinizing the budget and making sure na walang mali sa budget, constitutional duty namin yon, hindi ba?
Okay.
So that's what we exactly did, and that caused the delay of the budget. But we did not cause it. It was the lower house that really caused the delay of the passage of the budget.
Okay. The 2020 budget, you said it seems it's an impossible dream not to have pork in the budget. So far, you've wrapped up plenary debates on the proposed 2020 budget. But does this mean that the 2020 budget is now pork-free?
As of now, I think it's pork-free. No? The House version that was transmitted to us contained only 9.5 billion peso amendments consisting of institutional amendments. But when we deliberated on the budget in the Senate, I, for one, when I interpolated, I noticed that there are projects in the DPWH budget that could not be explained simply because they're lump sum. So when I questioned the DPWH, through the sponsor of course, ang lumabas doon, may mga projects that they explained or clarified, so they brought this thick errata, no? Even thicker than the budget book itself. And then when we scrutinized the errata submitted by DPWH, 45 billion pesos were deleted or were added, but 47 billion pesos are actually new projects. Ano? So, ang consultation ko with the other senators, they cannot do that because DPWH, being an executive agency, cannot participate in the amendment of the budget. Only the senators can introduce amendments. So effectively, when I questioned so many billions of pesos worth of projects, PAPs, programs, activities, and projects, they corrected it by submitting an errata or errata. But in the errata, may mga bagong projects instead of clarifying the questionable projects listed in their budget. May mga bagong projects na in-insert. I suspect, kasi hindi rin ma-explain masyado ni Secretary Villar, I suspect that the projects that were initially inserted do sa DPWH galing na sa mga congressmen, no? And then when I questioned it, they went back to the congressmen. So instead of clarifying the projects that they could not explain how they would implement it or the projects, ang ginawa, pinalitan yung mga projects. Ang problema rito, remember Karen, after they transmitted the budget to the Senate, there was still this pronouncement from the Speaker and some other congressmen that they were still waiting for some amendments. So, piniprepare nila yon sa BICAM because they had already transmitted the House version.
Yeah.
So, how would they still entertain amendments from their members? And when those projects were questioned, doon na nila sinama sa errata yung part or some amendments that they would want to insert during the BICAM.
Okay. Secretary Mark Villar was here yesterday and he called 2020-2021 as the golden age of infrastructure. He believes the budget of 590 billion will already pass through smoothly, no changes in the BICAM. Should he rest happy on that, or do you believe it is not yet over?
I don't think so because these figures do not come from me, no. Nanggaling to sa budget of expenditures and sources of financing, yung tinatawag na SAOP, sources of allotments, obligations and balances, statement of.
So you believe may slashing? The DPWH,
no, even DPWH has a big problem in utilizing their funds, their appropriations. Kasi as per latest COA report, ang yung mga issues involved, ano? Yung
The
projects
disbursement rate was 39%.
36%, no?
Okay.
Ang DPWS, 39% yung DOTR, disbursement over obligation. Yung kanilang may mga issues like not completed within the contract time, yung not yet started, tapos suspended, something like 118 billion pesos worth of projects, nasa mga 4,300 plus projects ang
But
hindi nagawa.
Secretary Mark Villar said they explained to the COA that some of the projects are actually obligated the funds for 2 years. So the disbursement would be for the next year.
Well, there goes another problem because ang ini-implement ng budget or DBM, yung budget department, is cash-based budgeting. No? Ang sinasabi doon, they must obligate lahat ng appropriations within 1 year kasi cash-based. But the disbursement could take 2 years. Now, here's the rub, ano? Ang obligation means that merong notice of award, meaning awarded na ito sa contractors. And then disbursements could come as per accomplishment, ano, per yung billing nila. So that's fine. But the problem is, nagka-cost-based budgeting tayo, and yet, for 2 years in a row, we've been passing legislation to extend the obligation or the availability of funds in a certain budget year for another year. So I questioned this during my interpellation. Bakit pa tayo nagka-cost-based budgeting na hindi naman practical at saka hindi naman talaga realizable, ano? Na hindi naman kaya eh. So, and yun nga, ang nangyayari, last year we passed a joint resolution, but because the Supreme Court already put its foot down on joint resolutions na walang effect sa batas. So right now we passed a bill that is awaiting the signature of the President, again extending the availability for hanggang December of 2020.
Okay. Now, during the BICAM, how much do you think the DPWH budget, if I were to ask you, how much would you slash it?
We already slashed it in the Senate version.
Okay.
No, dahil yung unused appropriations, school buildings for example, because DPWH is the implementing agency of DepEd when it comes to school buildings. Yung mga carry-over nila since 2014 up to 2019, no, 58,000 classrooms. No? Meaning, out of the 78,000 na classrooms na dapat ginawa nila hanggang 2019, ang nagagawa pa lang nila 19,000. You can imagine the gap, ano, or the backlog.
But isn't it, to be fair, isn't it too much to expect from our agencies? They are spending 5% of GDP now on infra. Do we have a problem as a country systemically in terms of absorptive capacity?
We have a big problem in
release
terms of
funds?
Release of funds, no problem, because funds are available. Even in the budget expenditure resources of financing, galing sa galing sa DBM din ito. We're borrowing more than what we need, more than what is expected sa deficit natin. For example, in 2018, we borrowed 897 billion pesos to address a deficit of only 558 billion. 2019, we borrowed 1.18 trillion pesos to address a deficit of 620 billion pesos. In 2020, we project to borrow 1.4 trillion pesos to address a projected deficit of 677 billion pesos. My question is, kung ile-lemanize natin ito, negosyante ako, I would be needing, say, 1 million pesos para additional capital or whatever. Why would I borrow 1.5 million?
Baka sabihin nila, kung may biglang gastusin.
I asked that, ang sabi nila, they're building up cash. But over the years, pwede ka mag-build up ng cash or cash position ng gobyerno for whatever reason, for 1 year or 2 years. But ito yung pattern eh.
Okay.
And the gap between our borrowings at saka yung deficit natin masyadong malaki. Imagine, to address a projected deficit of 677 billion, we are going to borrow 1.4 trillion.
So the DPWH budget as of now, can you declare it pork-free?
I don't think so. It will never happen. It is an impossible dream, as I said. Dahil pork will always be there.
Sa DPWH?
Sa DPWH, DepEd, DA, lahat
Okay.
naman yan may mga insertions.
All right. The DOTR was also criticized for having a low disbursement rate. The fear of Secretary Tugade were threats that it would be slashed by 60 billion, their 2020 budget.
Yes, because they cannot also absorb the budget appropriated para sa DOTR.
So how much
That's
did you
also problem.
slash?
Several billions, a few billions.
Okay. What are the
But that's
expectations?
not yet final.
Okay.
Those are my amendments that has yet to be adopted by the Senate as a body to come up with our own version of the budget. Yung
Would
budget
you
bill.
describe that Build is a dismal failure? Would you agree with Senator
It may
Villan
not
on that?
be a dismal failure, but it is not a success. Because kung successful yan, they would not change course in the midstream, so to speak. Because di ba nag-change na sila ng mga projects, nag-adjust na sila. They abandoned several projects already, yung mga sa Visayas, even in Mindanao, kinalimutan nila. So, nasa pipeline, kung i-abandon mo yung project, we cannot call it a success. But I don't want to judge the Build program as a dismal failure kasi meron din naman nagawa.
Okay. What projects would you want to see that would describe Build as a success?
Number one,
yes,
EDSA.
EDSA. Okay.
We have to find a solution to the traffic in EDSA.
So Secretary
Pag yun ang
Mark
masolve, saludo na tayong lahat.
Okay. Secretary Mark Villar said the Skyway extension that will be done first quarter of 2020 will decongest EDSA.
Well, yes, that is true because yung south to north and north to south, may mga alternate roads. But then, masyadong delayed na rin yan eh. We're supposed to be using the Skyway, yung connector, way back in 2018 or 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Now, it's extended to December of 2019. Mukhang abutin pa tayo ng first quarter of 2020.
Okay, the DOTR said the groundbreaking for the subway is December 2019, next month.
It will be finished in 2025.
Okay.
No, yun ang projected termination ng project. Yung Metro Manila subway.
Was the money for the subway in any way spent 2 years before? Because a year was feasibility study, that's what Tugade said. He said it was too much to expect that within 3 years,
Loan ito, Karen, JICA. I think the subway project is okay yan because it's a JICA planned subway project.
we're paying commitment fees, right? That's the
Yeah,
minus
of
score
course.
said when there are loans and grants
Yes.
and it's delayed.
Yeah. Ang iniwasan lang natin yung sovereign guarantee because it's no longer allowed.
Okay. You've also pointed out, I want to ask you this, CHED. You said that CHED, you found lump sums in CHED, and CHED, Pope De Vera was here, and he said they needed an increase. So right now, correct me with this, is you have 8.5 billion for Student Financial Assistance Program under CHED and another 8.5 for the Universal Access Quality Tertiary
I
Act.
realigned some budget that we slashed from DPWH and other agencies to CHED.
To CHED.
Even from DepEd to CHED. Because yung funding gap do sa pre-tuition tertiary education, out of the 1.5 million students that applied, 432,000 lang yung kaya nilang pondohan based sa budget nila. So what we did is to realign. I hope it will be carried all the way to the BICAM. Tatlo yung landmark legislation passed under this administration. Yung free tuition, universal healthcare, and national ID. Lahat ito may funding gaps. Universal healthcare, for example, under Tier 1 or Tier 2, ang funding gap masyadong malaki dahil sa Tier 2, meron yan tinatawag na low cost, medium cost, and high cost. Pag sinabi nating low cost, walang bagong programa. Yung ongoing programs ng DOH under the 2019 budget will only be continued sa 2020. So, hindi tayo nag-level up. If we consider leveling up to the medium cost, we'd be needing 241 billion pesos. Right now, yung funding na, yung appropriations para sa DOH, para sa universal healthcare, 151 billion. So, 10 billion more than the 141 billion para sa 2019. Eh yun, inflation lang yun eh. Ang sasagutin ng 10 billion pesos.
Yeah.
So, may funding gap tayo na between 241 and 151. Kung magahaya, ang medium cost, ito yung, there are select areas na tutugunan ng DOH. Ano? But kung ang i-aspire natin is yung high cost, meaning every barangay will be covered, ang kailangan natin 257 billion.
Okay.
So lalo lalaki yung funding
And
gap.
sin taxes won't be able to cover that even
Well,
if there will be an increase next
Yung
year?
dinideliberate naming sin tax ng alcohol and e-cigarettes, ano, ang maximum makukuha nun, if the Senate version will be adopted, 47 billion or 48. Kung yung DOF version, nasa mga 31, 32 lang or 33 billion. Pagka yung House version, 16 billion. So, not enough to cover for the requirement of DOH to cover yung high cost ng Tier 2.
So how much did you add sa DOH?
Not enough, but we added at least to compensate doon sa para lumaki ng konti yung coverage.
Okay, I wanted to ask you, did you add, just to check if these are correct, 9.4 billion pesos for poor patients in hospitals and another 7 billion for the employment of doctors and midwives?
That's in the committee report of
Okay.
the Senate.
I wanted to ask you, did you add, just to check if these are correct, 9.4 billion pesos for poor patients in hospitals and another 7 billion for the employment of doctors and midwives?
That's in the committee report of the Senate. Yung doon sa after the committee hearing, doon sa committee report pa lang nakadagdag na.
Okay.
I think mga 72 billion yung nadagdag ng ano diyan.
Okay.
Or 7 billion.
If I were to ask you, Senator, what parts of the budget do you believe are too big? Because I did see parts of the budget for, let's say, communications, PCOO, etc., intelligence funds, and some may ask that, is that really what they need? You could transfer it to other agencies?
Pero these are minuscule
Okay.
compared to the other agencies and department. Ang masama sa atin, we're pouring in so much budget to big departments.
DPWH, DOTR, and DepEd.
It's okay lang if they are able to spend the budget that are pagdating ng year-end, makita natin yung unused appropriations. And this happens year in and year out. Hindi naman ito'y parang exceptionally mali yung isang year. Pero look, during the time of even former President Aquino, in-average namin yung unused appropriations, meaning unutilized at saka yung unreleased. Nag-average sila ng nasa mga 400 billion a year. And under the present administration, ang average nasa mga 250 billion.
So to be fair, this administration is utilizing it better?
Yeah,
Is that
better.
factual?
I can
Okay.
say that. But I can
Okay.
say that. But ang
Okay.
problema, yun nga, baon na sa 9,000 pesos na utang. Kailangan mag-address sa deficit natin because 1.4 trillion projected borrowings in 2020 against only 677 billion. Imagine.
Okay.
So papalo na tayo ng mga 8 trillion plus yan before 2022
So
ends.
it seems, listening to you, Senator, it's also a mind shift. I want to ask you, let's say the DPWH,
Yeah.
what would be the best way for the DPWH not to blame the Senate if the budget was slashed, why projects won't be delayed, and yet they're able to spend just what they can spend for the year?
Let's put it
What's
this
the
way.
middle ground?
Ang problema natin, yung RDC, Regional Development Council, initiated or endorsed projects constitute only 20 to 25% of the appropriations law. Yung 75 to 80% agency initiated, meaning
It's
Sino
not,
ba? May disconnect eh.
it's not bottom to top, it's top to bottom.
Well, who would know better the needs and priorities of the communities than the local government units? So, when the local development councils from barangay, municipal, city, and provincial submit their local development plans all the way to RDC, Regional Development Council, to be incorporated nagkaroon ng budget call, yun dapat ang priorities because pinag-aralan yun sa baba. And sa implementation, ang nangyayari, there are local projects na devolve yung functions sa mga local government units. And yet, ang implementing agencies, national government. So why don't we just download the resources to the provincial, municipal, city? Sila nakakaalam kung anong kailangan nila doon sa baba.
Would you need a new law for that, or is just a systemic
Well, I
change?
filed the bill. It is called BRAVE, Budget Reform Advocacy or Act for Village Empowerment, meaning we should reverse the distribution of resources from national to local. Ito na nga yung gusto ng presidente, gusto ng administration, mag-federalize. Pero hindi naman natin kailangan mag-change ng charter. All we need to do is to download and have a more equitable distribution of resources to make the local government units compete with each other in terms of development. Because right now, ang pwede lang nilang gamitin from their era, and this is a law, only 20% of their era could be spent for development.
Yeah.
But if we download resources for their development, sila na mag-implement. Anyway, kinocontract din naman ng DPWS. Why don't we just allow, i-capacitate na lang natin yung mga munisipyo, yung mga planning officers nila, pag-aralan natin, meron tayong local government
and
academy.
can't you discuss that in the BICAM? Can there be a test year for that? Let's say 2020. Can you test that in 2020 or it's too
I
soon?
think it's too late for...
Too soon.
No, late not to discuss that kasi BICAM na. So for 2021, I'm going to pursue and with the help of local government executives. Ngayon, medyo active ngayon si former Justice Velasco. He's now the president of the League of Provinces of the Philippines. And he's very active because they're pursuing the Supreme Court ruling on the ERA. Because there's a new ruling from the Supreme Court saying that not only the BIR collections, maski yung customs collection, basta national taxes should be included in their ERA. Ito yung nilalaban nila. And they're invoking they need something like 92 to 100 billion initially. So, yun. Ang may disconnect talaga, Karen.
Yeah. So it's a systemic change. So you believe 2021 is the soonest possible time it can be implemented?
The problem is, congressmen, district representatives, especially those who are, at loggerheads with their local officials, with their governors and mayors, siyempre, mas gusto nilang pagdating sa House, doon na lamang sila mag-i-insert ng budget for the provinces, for their districts. Whereas, the more practical and I think this is a wiser solution sa budget, sa appropriations is bottom up.
Okay. All right. Hold that thought, Senator. We're going to continue our conversation with Senator Ping. All right. Welcome back. Still with us on Hot Copy, Senator Panfilo Lacson. Very quickly, because I want to ask you also about Vice President Leni Robredo getting fired. I know she seeked you right after her appointment. Let's start first with this. You saw duplications in the DPWH budget, Cannon Road and a few others. Have those been removed?
Cannon Road we retained because when they clarified through the errata that they submitted, naglagay na ng stationing. Pero may duplication pa rin because nagdoble yung dalawang stations, yung isang station. Other projects like yung Rapu-Rapu Circumferential and the Batan is a barangay in Rapu-Rapu. This is in Bicol. Isang circumferential road, dalawa yung budget. So inalis namin yung isa. Pareho, Batan and Rapu-Rapu. Ang problema, 2019 budget, nakita namin because I have civil engineers in my office as consultants. So, dalawang contractors, magkasalubong yung lanes, nag-overlap. Nakasave dapat ng 11 million pesos. Sabi ko, nasan yung 11 million? Dapat isoli nyo kasi nag-overlap eh. Ginawa na nito, gagawin pa nito. Hindi naman ginawa nito kasi nagawa na nga nito. So nasa 11 million, they could not answer. Tapos another issue is yung tinatawag na engineering and overhead expense, ano? Or engineering, overhead engineering, engineering overhead.
Okay,
Anyway, pagka kasi sa national, malaki 3.5% yung iyaw. Pagka binaba mo sa regional, 2.5%. Pag binaba mo sa local, 2% lang. Sabi ko, ba't pinapark nyo pa sa national? Ang nag-implement din naman, district engineering office. So may savings kayo dyan na sa iyaw, engineering overhead, anyway, whatever it is.
No, I wanted to ask you about that first. Number one, do you see it, just very quickly, do you see it as an effort to be corrupt or it's just sloppy work?
Both. Sometimes it's because of corruption. Sinasadya na double appropriations para ma-save yung isang appropriation.
Okay, that's one. Secretary Tugade said, there's no such thing as park to pork. The reason it's parked, he said, in the DBM and another agency, because you pointed it out, he said it's because it's more efficient that way.
How could that be efficient if it's parked in another agency?
He said it's faster for the DBM to release.
No, I don't think so. It is faster to disperse if the budget is with the agency. Di ba?
So why would they park? What's the intention?
I do not know. Yung may mga local projects, ano? For example, assistance to cities and other financial assistance to local government units. And I question it because why is it lodged in the Department of Budget and Management, which is not an implementing agency? In any case, the ILG is the one that will implement. Or if it's allocated to selected or select local government units, sila mag-i-implement.
Okay.
Bakit natin lalagay yung budget sa DBM? So lump sum yan.
All right. Your definition of pork, I want to ask you about that. Of course, the Supreme Court made it clear what it is. But then there seems to be a debate every time you point it out. I had Congressman El Rey Villafuerte here.
For convenience, ang definition lang ng pork, as per Supreme Court ruling, post-enactment legislation, meaning, or implementation, meaning, meron kang 120 million yung congressman or 70 million, tapos lump sum yun, sila napipili ng project after the budget measure has been enacted into law. But merong portion sa ruling na all informal practices of similar nature, no, na tantamount to grave abuse of discretion, pork din yun. Meaning, pag naglagay ka ng lump sum, wala kang description, hindi mo sinasabi kung anong gagawin mo doon sa pork, doon sa insertion, pork din yun.
Okay.
And then, tulong donong, for example, meron na tayong pre-tuition.
Yeah.
Bakit ka pa magtutulong donong na ang namimili ng scholars,
Politiko.
yung congressmen? Anong competence nila to choose who are qualified and who are not qualified? Kasi merong parameter sinusunod yung CHED na kailangan poor students but deserving.
Okay, wait, very quickly, Senator. Congressman El Rey Villafuerte was here, and this was when you had pointed out a 10 billion peso insertion at some point, where he said this first. There were accusations that each congressman had 100 million pesos, where 70 million went to hard projects and 30 million for soft. He denies that.
Of course he will deny that.
But he said,
nobody will admit that.
No, but I wanted to ask you, he denies it because he said some congressmen, in fact, have bigger. They've submitted the needs of the district, so he said that's not pork.
I'm talking of average.
Okay, go ahead.
Average lang yun. Of course, some congressmen would have 200 million.
But if it's itemized, is still that pork? It's still
not
pork?
everything is itemized. Yun ang problema. Pagka itemized, we don't question because there's a description. Pag itemized kasi, it appears that there's planning involved. Ang problema, kung hindi nga itemized, halimbawa, Cannon Road, imagine there's one item in the 2020 budget. Kita namin, very alarming. Requesting for a road project in Cagayan. How would you fund or how would you implement a request? That's sloppy work. So ang ibig sabihin nun, sinabit ng congressman, cut and paste, nilagay sa NEP, National Expenditure Program.
Yun yung sinasabi niyo, sir, na naka-bulk na parang it would have an average of 100 million because it's a request. That's what you're saying. It's not specific.
Yung request, maliit lang yun, 15 million. But
Okay.
how would you implement a request? Meaning, sloppy work yun. Parang, obviously, galing sa congressman kasi request nga eh.
So it's still there, the 2020?
Inalis namin.
All of that.
Inalis
so
namin.
how much did you remove? When it...
Basta't yung na-delete, dinidelete na ng DPWH because I questioned.
Yeah.
I think what they deleted, nasa mga 45 to 47 billion pesos
Because
worth.
congressmen have an interpretation, and tell me if this is where...
For convenience.
No,
That's
this
for
is
convenience.
this is where you disagree. When you have a congressman on the show, he will say, the minute we submit our request to an agency, that is not pork. That's
Well,
the day.
yes and no. No,
Okay.
because ang ginagawa nila ngayon, because they're always trying to be one step ahead. No? But we're also trying to be one step ahead. So ang ginawa nila, dahil hindi na nga pwedeng uubra yung sa amendments nila pinapasok sa House version, NEP pa lang kinakausap na nila yung agency head. Tatawagin nila si Secretary Villar, tatawagin si Secretary Tugade. Ito yung mga request ng mga congressmen. But when I asked during committee hearings and even during plenary debates, when I asked the sponsor or the agency head through the sponsor, kasi nandiyan naman sila as resource persons, alam nyo ba ito? The usual answer is no.
That, for you, that makes it pork.
Well, because the agency...
Even if it's passed through the agency.
Pero ano yan eh, ang tatawa na lang yun pag tinanong sa committee hearing, do you know about this project? Did you plan for this project? Do you know how to implement this? Ngingitin lang. But we of course yield to the lawmakers because you have the power of the purse and so forth and so on.
All right. Another
so it
one.
appears na galing talaga sa congressman yung project.
Okay. Another one that Congressman El Rey Villafuerte said, you pointed out 4 billion pesos, which you defined as pork, that was for LGU finance assistance. So, Congressman El Rey was here and he said he hopes Senator Lacson would see that these are for environmental projects of LGUs, and he said it's very strict. He had a form exactly how LGUs would apply for the funding of the 4 billion.
Even Secretary Abisado during the committee hearing sa DBM, sa DBCC, when I asked about the 4 billion pesos, hindi niya rin alam ano yung specifics.
But that would be pork? Would you...
Lump sum eh.
But ang sagot ni Congressman El Rey, but Karen, what about disaster funds? That's lump sum.
Hindi niya alam ang sinasabi niya. Because when I questioned that, and I asked DILG Secretary Anyo, kindly submit to us the specifics of the 4 billion pesos that is now lodged in the DBM budget. But you're supposed to implement this. It's fine with me, it's fine with us, once you submit a list of projects. So he did. 2,379 LGUs, barangays, yung conflicted, yung conflict areas, meaning the barangays are addressing problems of NPA, ganon. So we allowed it. Hindi na namin inalis because merong listahan ng 2,379 barangays all over the country na given, I think, 1.4 million each out of the 4 billion pesos. So we did not delete that.
Yeah.
But as it appeared during our deliberation, yung 4 billion, wala nakasulat kung saan gagamitin. And when I asked the ILG if they would be able to implement, sabi nila hindi kaya kasi hindi nila alam yun. O ano siya sabi ni Congressman El Rey? So hindi niya alam yung sinasabi niya.
No, but the 4 billion was removed for LGU financial assistance?
Nandun.
Nandun.
Kasi nga, nag-submit yung DILG.
Okay.
At that time, when you were talking to
him,
Congressman El, wala pa yon. Because sa akin, sinabit ng DILG yon.
Okay.
Ano lang, last week lang yun.
All right. Now, moving away from the budget, what big change should we expect, I mean, during the BICAM? So you said to be pork-free is an impossible dream. It's already at 4.1 trillion. I don't see it having a big change. What will you ensure when it comes to passing the 4.1 trillion?
Well, we won't get tired in scrutinizing the budget. That's for one. That's one. I volunteered to be a member again of the BICAM.
But will
just
you
to
still
be there.
fight for it to be televised? Because they don't want.
No.
They said it, you will have people that will be grandstanding.
On the other hand, if it's, if the public will witness the proceedings, di ba mas behave kami? Walang bulungan. Ang nangyayari kasi sa BICAM, kanya-kanyang bulungan. Look,
Bulungan.
Karen,
Okay.
bulungan parang, yung sa akin ha, wag mo pabayaan dyan. And ang nangyayari, we meet formally, constitute the BICAM, and then we create a small group BICAM
Yeah.
consisting of just the chairpersons of the two
Yeah.
panels.
Oo.
Sila na lang nag-uusap. So, pagdating nila sa kanilang bahay, doon na yung bulungan. I
Okay.
want it transparent.
Alright.
I want it public. Not necessarily covered by media, but there should be some NGOs, CSOs, who will not participate anyway. Yung media ba makikisali roon na, hindi, kailangan namin ganito. Wala namang ganun eh.
Okay. Vice President Leni Robredo, you said you weren't surprised when she was fired, but could she have done something differently? And after her appointment, she sought your advice. What did you tell her? What did you say?
First, that she should ask for the parameters, yung scope ng kanyang authority. That's very important because it is a new position. It's not even existent doon sa EO number 15, co-chair, because there's only one chair consisting of
We just have
20.
3 minutes to go, sir.
Yes,
So, yeah.
okay. So, well, I think she did all the right things because she started consulting with people. And in fact, I mentioned USDA.
Yeah. But was it a mistake that she didn't ask for an audience with President Duterte and she kept speaking to the media? That's what Secretary Sal
Yeah.
Panelo said.
I'm not sure if she sought an audience or she submitted a report asking for the parameters of her new job.
But should she have asked
She
for
should.
an audience?
That's the
one.
first order of the day. Kasi binigyan ka ng position, Mr. President, ano ba yung kaya ko lang gawin? Ano ba yung limitations? That's very important because walang expectations, wala ring excesses doon sa gagawin mo.
Okay. Is this a blessing in disguise for Vice President Leni Robredo? You did say she was on the right track.
Yes, and I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then some also say that she was meant to fail or she was set up to fail. So could...
But it did not turn out that way.
Okay, go ahead.
Even if she was fired, I think public opinion is still on her side.
Is this a miscalculation on President Duterte's part to fire her
Well,
19 days into
Well, let's face it, she was appointed out of pique. Hindi naman talaga in-appoint yan because she was making comments about the drug war. And yet, yung parang challenge sa kanya, out of parang inis, sige, ikaw na. Remember, parang ako na, ikaw na. And yet, when she started, consultations and everything, and of course, media would be all over her, di ba? Dahil for a vice president who's a woman, hindi ito chauvinist, for a woman na walang experience sa law enforcement, bibigyan mo ng trabaho. So, siyempre, media would be very interested.
Okay. Should she continue?
As a private citizen, even as a vice president, yes, she should.
She should. All right. Now in the lower house, after the Duterte-Robredo experience, they're already pushing. Congressman Lito Atienza wants a change that the president and the vice president be voted as one. Tandem na for 2022. Do you support that?
I would support that, except that I'm not sure if it's a violation of the Constitution. I'm not sure. I've not read the provision. Pero bakit hindi nga in tandem na boboto? Probably it's in the Constitution. So if we pass legislation that is not in consonance with the provision of the Constitution, baka ma-declare lang na ang Constitution na lang ng Supreme Court.
Okay, last words. What advice would you give Vice President Leni Robredo now? Since to begin with, she did make an appointment with you and she asked your advice. Now that it's over, what advice would you give her?
Well, if she wants to continue, nag-start na siya sa advocacy, then she can continue. Ang advice ko lang is, medyo parang threatening yung kanyang binitiwang salita na hindi nila ako kilala, isisiwalat ko sa taong bayan. Sa akin, if it will be harmful or maging impediment do sa drug war, sana wag na lang. Pero kung yung isisiwalat niya, yung mga natutunan niya to improve or enhance or to help, then by all means, she should report to the nation.
All right. On that note, Senator Ping Lacson, thank you so much for coming to Head Start today. I'm Karen Davila.